Well, hello everybody. My name is Davies. I'm a practicing evaluator and have been one for over 20 years now. And it gives me great pleasure to share with you some of my thinking, drawing on my experience and the things that I have learnt as an evaluation practitioner, sometimes teacher of evaluation, and someone who cares about our practice and about those of us who reach out to one another about our communities of practice, and this is part of it. So I'm very happy to contribute. I'll start with the sub-question, which is what, in my view, are those topics that should emerge or gain attention. Well, I don't know whether what I'm about to say reflects my ability to predict the future of evaluation, or whether it is more of a reflection of my thinking and my preferences. However, I think a key issue, a key topic for us as evaluators and for our practices globally is the opportunity, the ability of moving evaluation more towards its role as a learning function, rather than being predominantly and in some cases exclusively, as I believe is largely the case now, seen and practiced as an accountability function. This is not to say that I do not think that evaluation does not have a role to play as part of the exchanges in accountability relationships. Evaluation can bring interesting, meaningful information to bear as part of the dynamics of accountability. However, it is my view that evaluation, as we know it and practice it, has largely hitched its wagon to the accountability train. And in doing so, I think that we are missing the opportunity for evaluation to come into its own and provide what I consider to be the unique and essential value of evaluation, which is contribution to knowledge. And this is not a contribution in a static or theoretical sense. It's a contribution of knowledge to issues, to organizations, to programs, so that the learning, which is part of receiving knowledge, translates into decisions, actions that ultimately are going to improve the services, the programs, the organizations, in order to better serve the public interest. It's a contribution to the public good. So for me, I think that is the topic that we need to focus on. And even though, and I do have to say this, I see reports that say this evaluation has a dual objective of accountability and learning, and anticipating that some colleagues might say, well, we do work on learning. Quite frankly, when accountability is there, it predominates, and most of the effort and the attention goes to accountability. And I think we should really begin to shift that mix so that there is some contribution to accountability, but most of it should go to learning. And in organizational context, evaluation should be seen, should become, and should be understood as the intelligence of the organization rather than a vehicle for accountability. A second sub-question is, well, what kind of concerted actions can we take, or how can these strengthen our evaluation practice? So what I am now going to say builds on my initial proposition, which is that we need collectively, and I think that our professional associations, communities of practice, our VOPEs, our institutional platforms on which to engage politically with both commissioners of evaluation, but as well the various institutional stakeholders that have an interest in evaluation. What do I mean by this? I mean that as part of what I consider to be a necessary shift towards contribution to knowledge, I think that we also have to engage on the basis of the values that this knowledge that we're contributing are. What are these underlying values? And they are largely writ, at least in my mind, what we could call democratic values. They are the values that underlie gender equality. They are the values that underlie human rights. They are the values that underlie equity. And these are, by nature, political issues. And it is very difficult individually as evaluators to interact, particularly for those of us who are consultants, with our commissioners specifically on those issues, at least in such a way that you can hope to begin to change the way in which institutions politically conceive of and use evaluation. And I think that here what we need are for our various VOPEs and other associations to engage with commissioners and stakeholders. So, for example, we are, and I'm talking now as a European, faced with an unprecedented crisis, I would say a human tragedy, respecting migration towards Europe and terrible deaths in the Mediterranean. Now, part of what has led to this sorry state of affairs is a decision by the European Union with leadership from the UK about a little over a year ago to stop financing a program that was called Mare Nostrum and had as its primary objective the rescue of our fellow human beings and citizens who were trapped in boats in the middle of the Mediterranean and at risk of drowning and dying. A decision to stop financing that program under the justification that maintaining that would create an incentive for migrants to attempt that crossing. Well, there is no evidence to support that. None. There is no evidence. If anything, the evidence shows the contrary and points to the fact that that's not the problem. Nor will the solution, as it seems to be shaping up now, be to attempt to bomb the people who engage in human trafficking. These are examples of policy decisions that have very real and tragic effects on human life. And these are policy decisions that have no substantive basis in what we would consider reasonably founded information. Now, I don't think it's realistic or reasonable to expect that an individual, as an evaluator, can be heard, at least by the institutions, including governments. I can certainly make my views known individually through social media, but I think that the collective action and weight of VOPEs and of associations, of evaluation associations, should begin to engage on topics such as that. Where is the UK Evaluation Society, the European Evaluation Society, etc., in engaging and calling directly on these governments and other organizations to justify where is the evidence for those policy decisions. And this is the kind of dynamic that we need to begin to initiate collectively and in a concerted fashion. Future priorities in terms of the global evaluation agenda. Obviously, climate change is increasingly becoming a central issue for us as humanity, but I think as well as professionals and as evaluators. And we need to begin to think quite deeply about what this particular issue, this problem means, not just in terms of our professional practice, not just in a utilitarian fashion. How do you monitor and evaluate a project for adaptation to climate change? Of course, that is important, but we need to begin to think deeply, and we need to exchange with each other, with one another, on what are the implications, both political, of what is happening in terms of climate change. Clearly, it is the poorest countries and the ones that are least responsible for contributing to it that are going to end up paying the price. And this is not a price in terms of discomfort. This is about similar situations as the one I've referred to in the Mediterranean with migrants dying, where we are going to start to have climate refugees. What does this mean politically? How can we as evaluation communities of practice engage publicly, forcefully and meaningfully with governments and those who decide ultimately on these policies? And on that particular topic, I would just like to say that one of the issues we also need to think about is the interface between human and natural resource systems. I don't think we've done a very good job of not only reflecting but integrating this interface into our work as evaluators. And I have to nod towards a colleague of mine called Andy Rowe, who in his work has been doing this for a while and has on a number of occasions called on us as communities of practice to begin to take this seriously. It is a very important issue for us to prioritize as we move forward. For me, Evaluator, and to be frank, I was a skeptic from the start. Sometimes I continue to grumble a little bit because I do have my moments when I'm a bit of a curmudgeon. However, Marco Sigone, being a close colleague, is someone who I very much appreciate, and when I look at the way in which he has managed to bring us together, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled, and a lot of my skepticism has been pushed to the side. For me, I think the fact that we are gathering, that we are recognizing each other across countries, across regions, across different types of organizations, and that we are beginning to see in each other the similarities, the semblances, rather than the differences, which is what we tend to focus on, is to me extremely valuable. It's a little bit like looking into a mirror and seeing in others parts of what you value and what interests you, whether you are part of a civil society organization, a government, or live in Pakistan or in Chile. So this global network and this recognition for me of identity on the basis of a few key values that we hold dear is I think one of the great gains in this eval year. I think we are beginning to see ourselves not only as communities of practice, but as maybe a broader and a global community of values, of human values. I think I've talked enough, and I look forward to discussing further with any of you who might be interested in some of these issues and anything you care to bring forward. Thank you very much.